Hello and welcome to Movie Buffs, a show where the action is the juice and we live our lives a quarter mile at a time. I'm your host Cisco from Misfit Minded. You can follow me on all the socials at misfit_minded and my website misfitminded.com.
And I'm your other host, Shani B. You can find me on all the socials at It's Me, Shani B. Before we get into today's movie, the Emmys were this past weekend. So, we're also TV buffs. And so I
Mm,
wanted to talk a little bit about the
yeah.
telecast. What are your takes? Did you enjoy the show?
So I'm gonna be honest, I did not have time to catch the Emmys yet. Yeah, it's on my list, but just a busy week. And so between this movie and everything, so wasn't able to catch it. But so I'll throw it back to you. Like, what did you? I saw the winners. So we could talk
Okay.
winners and stuff. But I didn't see the telecast. But yeah, how was it?
It was okay. I think obviously our standard for, how these shows are going to go and what the broadcasts are going to look like has been incredibly lowered over the past, 5+ ish years. I still always enjoy, seeing all the celebrities come out. I still enjoy when they try to do tributes to things. And what was kind of cool is, one of the ways they introduced certain categories was to do tributes to certain archetypes we see on TV, like TV doctors, lawyers, police, and that was like a pretty funny thing, TV dads, TV moms, all this stuff. And so some of that stuff was really fun and kind of like why I personally, as a fan, watch these things.
Hmm.
But it also didn't go over a huge amount of time. I really liked the hosts, the
The
Levy
Levies.
family, as it were. Yeah, they were so funny together and so cute. And I missed seeing them together because I'm a huge Schitt's Creek fan. So seeing them work together again was really fun. And yeah, I think it was easy, right? Like maybe it didn't take any huge risks, but it also didn't fall too flat on its face in any areas either,
Yeah.
which I think, is the risk we've run with like certain hosts in the past.
Right.
And so, other than that, it was pretty enjoyable. And there were a couple surprises in terms of the winners. But I do think, it's just interesting because I guess I felt very conflicted this time watching like I have enjoyed The Bear a lot. I
Hmm.
really like, the first season especially is very good. But it is an interesting thing where like that same argument of like whether or not it's actually a comedy is sort of like the hot button
Hmm.
issue that everyone is leaving, this year's award show with. And I guess I'm curious because I know that you did a review and of course
Hmm.
you've seen the show.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the strange way that sometimes categories work in order to honor certain shows?
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of it, to be honest. Like I don't like I know we talked about this when we covered the Golden Globes before, which does like the same thing. Like
Mhm.
I get that you want to award as many movies and shows as you can, like that's the whole thing of it. But then it gets into this like category fraud is like what people call it of like is it a comedy or not? And I saw someone on Threads make a good point about it where he was saying, um, we should revisit like don't be like, angry at the bear, but just like that these categories were built at a time when TV was just meant something different. The
Mm,
categories were so clearly defined that like this is a sitcom, this is a drama, and like
right.
we're in a time of like complex television when those lines are like blurrier than ever, and maybe we need to like step away from that and figure out a way to because it's like yeah when I saw like that Jeremy Allen White, it's like best comedy actor and it's like he's crying and having anxiety attacks through most of the bear. And it's
Yes.
like
Yes.
would I really call that the best comedic acting performance of the year? Like
Not
probably
sure.
not,
Yeah. Mhm.
but I'm happy that that the show's getting I mean like I thought the two no-brainers when I saw that they were nominated was Jamie Lee Curtis and John Bernthal for the Fishes episode. That was such a phenomenal episode of TV. And those two performances carried that episode. You know what I mean? So it just like made sense that they and I know that wasn't part of the televised uh, segment. I don't think.
Right, yeah, it was the creative artists or whatever.
But I was like that makes sense to me. Like there's some of the categories don't make sense. I was like that should be a shoe in. I guess like I was kind of confused with I forget the actress's name, but who won for the Bear because she has a really good episode. I've talked about this in my review too of season 3,
Yeah.
and I was like, oh man, like she's definitely gonna probably be nominated and win. But they put up season 2, I think, of the Bear for the Emmys or whatever. So
Right.
so she didn't win for that performance per se. She won for season 2, which I had just rewatched season 1 and season 2, and I wouldn't call her performance necessarily like the standout of that season. Like they really focused on other characters in season 2. So it's just all around the
It's a
rules and
little
stuff.
messy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like it never. I think that's what keeps me from like if this was the Oscars, I would have seen it open like the same night. You know what I mean? Like, and
Right,
just
right.
I think that there's some pushback on the Emmys that keeps me away from it with the categories and with the seasons. And I think
Yes.
the other part I kind of have not an issue with, but just like same kind of pushback is just like I think Emmys is one of those award ceremonies where it's like one show is the winner of the night. The Oscars has that too sometimes, but
Right.
I think in recent years we've talked about this before too. They really like to spread the love around now, so that doesn't happen as
Yeah.
much. And so, but from what I have seen and heard, Shogun just took away pretty much like everything, and so it's like that doesn't make for great TV necessarily. And The Bear, when
Right.
when you know that, oh, those two shows are going to be winning everything.
Yes. Yeah, that's the hard thing too, because it does feel like, The Bear, in my opinion, The Bear is a hard drama, right? Like there may be some moments of comedic relief, but it is a hard
Yeah, I feel
drama of
like
a
if the
show.
Fact Brothers, like the people who play the Fact Brothers, they got nominated for comedy. Yes, they
Completely
they
different.
they are the comedy in the show, but
Exactly.
I don't really
Exactly.
laugh at Jeremy
No,
Allen White
we
or
shouldn't laugh at it, in
no.
fact. Like, I almost feel like calling it a comedy discounts the amazing authenticity of, like, the people that it is trying to shed lights on, to the people it's trying to reflect and, let feel seen by calling it a comedy rather than kinda taking it seriously, as it is. But I think that's the issue, is it's sort of like, it's gonna be The Bear or Shogun, and they want it to be The Bear and Shogun, so we have to find a way to make that happen, and
Yeah.
that is awkward, because I do feel like, I watched a little bit of Shogun. It's not exactly, like, for me. Like, I was into Game of Thrones abstractly, but I'm not, like, a huge fantasy person per se, so I kind of understand, but, like, it did win, like, all of the creative arts Emmys, and it was
Mm,
nominated for a record high, so it's sort of like one of those things where how can that be enough, and it doesn't have to always win everything, and vice versa. Like, I don't know, it just felt like it is kind of confusing because I don't really know how they spread the love around appropriately, and I think
yeah.
they're still trying to figure that out, because the governor's award guy, the dude who's, like, in charge or whatever, was like, "Hey, we're expanding the numbers, we have amazing diversity," like, all the standard award show stuff. So maybe
Mhm.
that's something we'll see change as we go forward, but, like, some part of me had to, like, make a Katherine Heigl joke and sort of be like, I almost feel like The Bear swept once, and so it doesn't need to, like, be in contention anymore. Not that
Mm,
it's not great TV or that it doesn't deserve to be recognized, but I almost feel like there's something kind of, like, that sucks about if you win every year, because then it's sort of like, sure, your performance is consistently great, but, like, so are some of these other, shows, so are some of these other actors, and they're just gonna walk away, like, only being nominated, never really getting the chance to be like, "Oh, yeah, this year, like, so and so withdrew so that I could win this award."
yeah, the fact that too, like it was the same network, FX, won both. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah,
that
holy
really
smokes.
is not spreading the love around.
No, and it's like
To
tech, yeah, and it's like, Hulu related too, so it's also like Disney, like, it's just a huge
yeah.
monopoly on those
And they
awards.
own ABC where it was televised. Like it's just
Yep.
it feels very
It's
monopolized and like icky to me. I will say
yes.
I do want to like make it clear, like I loved season 2 of The Bear, and like to me that's the standout season so far of the
Okay.
three.
Mhm.
And so I have no issue with them taking away a lot of awards for season 2. If I'm getting that right, I hope I am getting. But like, the
I think
fact
you
that
really
like
are.
the directors and actors have won for season 2 episodes would make that right. But then
I think that's right.
Shogun came out this year, so I'm very confused on how that stuff works because season 2 was last year.
Yeah, streaming has really made it awkward in terms of, like, understanding how seasons can be represented and, like, windows of eligibility, like, that has definitely made it messy too.
And like season 3, like my review, I was pretty mixed on it overall. But if it was for season 2, I have no issue with them. It's just like what we're saying with like the categories and how it just But there were some wins I was like happy to see. Lamorne Morris win.
Yes.
I think I've been following him, forever since New Girl,
Yes.
since he was in, Barbershop, Game Night. Like he's just been someone I really like watching. I
He
think he's
is
really
the
funny.
best.
So him
Mhm.
winning for Fargo, I thought was cool.
Yep.
Eric Andre, I was a huge fan of the Eric Andre show. I was really happy that he won, and
Yes.
his style of comedy. I actually like binged the whole Eric Andre show during the pandemic, and it's just like I thought that was like the perfect time where it was just like that style of comedy. It's like it's so absurd, and I'm just like I don't know what's happening in the world right now either, but like this is getting me through it. Like it
And
was the
he's
perfect.
the best example of, like, what comedy is when it's absurd or dark or, abstract
Hmm.
versus the idea of, like, what a Black comedy is when it's, like,
Hmm.
actually a drama, you know?
Yeah, yeah, that's for sure a comedy. You know what I mean? Like that's.
Exactly. Exactly.
Um, I saw Jodie Foster win for True
Classic.
Detective, which so this is another thing too, where it's like I didn't love that season necessarily either of True Detective, but I do
Mhm.
think it gets with Emmys, and because a lot of TV shows like to put in these legacy actors in there that they just want to see them win. Like,
Right.
am I making that up? Like, I do feel like they're just like Jodie Foster's never won an Emmy, and here she is in this like she was. I mean, she was good in it, but like it was definitely like one of the weaker seasons of True Detective
It's
by far.
definitely a joke, that Dan Levy made, he
Yeah,
was like, "Hey, it's that night when TV honors film actors who decided to do an arc on a television show." So, like, he made
exactly.
a
Yeah.
joke about how, like, that is another piece of this too, and I guess that's what's hard about it, is it's sort of like, I don't know why voters vote the way they vote. I don't know how they sort of see the responsibility as a voter or anything, but it sort of like reminds me of that thing of like there are just certain actors that if they're nominated, they're gonna win.
Yeah.
And I feel like even Jeremy Allen White is this because he just like has this like long love attached to him. And I feel like that's maybe kind of what happened with Jodie Foster, where it's sort of like we really missed her for a long time and
Hmm.
she came back. She was on this TV show and it was pretty good. I think it's always going to be impossible to live up to the initial True Detective season and kind of what that
One of the best.
created.
One of the best.
Exactly. It'll be
Yeah.
impossible, but I do feel like, she had a kind of quality and grounding that resonated enough with viewers. It's just, again, like,
I just think it's so.
awards.
You're talking about voting, right? And it's like we talk about this with the Oscars too. Like,
Hmm.
when they're filling out that ballot, we know they have not seen everything. It's just too much time for us people with regular jobs
Right.
compared to like actors that like are working on stuff all the time. And so we know we're not. So I think it's doubly the case with Emmys that they're not watching all these TV shows. So like I feel like it's very easy for them to just be like, I liked Shogun a lot. Let me just put Shogun for everything. Like or
Hmm.
like
Or
I feel like
everyone's
there's a.
saying it's good. I'll just vote for
Mhm.
that.
I feel like there's a lot of that, which is yeah. I mean, and this goes back to because I remember like Ted Lasso had the one year where it was like they just won everything, and it's like the same thing. I like Ted Lasso too, but would I've liked to see maybe spread it around to other shows? Like I know a lot of people are upset. Like Abbott Elementary is a true comedy,
That's
and
exactly it. Yes.
and then that gets snubbed every year because
Yeah,
of
because
these
it
other
can't.
shows that are sneaking in, and they get like some level of prestige because they're like dramatic comedies.
Exactly.
They're more important, and it's like nah. If we're talking about comedies here, like
Yeah.
what are we doing
It's like how Alec Baldwin won the Emmy every year for 30 Rock and Steve Carell never did, and that is wrong.
for The
That's
Office or
just
whatever?
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, that's
Mhm.
just completely wrong, like, they are
There's
equally
so many
good, they're
like that
doing
too. Like
different things.
Better Call Saul never won any Emmys. Mad Men. I don't think.
I think he won in his final season, but, like,
Mm,
something similar was happening with him
yeah.
too, where, like, some other actor just got it every year, and I think, like, that's why the Katherine Heigl thing I love to bring up that, like, she won, like, once and was like, "I'm out of the contention, like, I don't
Yeah.
need to do it," and everyone was sort of like, "Oh, you're just, like, think you're so good," But in retrospect, I'm sort of like, if you've won for the character once and you're gonna
Mhm.
be consistent, I don't know that you need to keep winning to feel
Yeah.
valuable, right? Like you can just trust I'm consistent and that's enough, and let other shows have the opportunity to be seen or to get some representation.
And I mean, the fact that The Idol won any awards, and that was truly one of the worst seasons of television I've ever seen in my life, too. It's there's some,
Right?
how can that be the case?
Exactly. Yeah, that
uh,
we always walk away feeling like there's something that was, undone, not enough or something. And I don't know if
yeah,
that's ever going to change per se, but I will say it was an enjoyable enough telecast, and like nothing, no
yeah.
moments of fear where I was like afraid something, like I was like, "Oh no, they bombed," or anything like that. Just a standard award show.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I was gonna watch it that night, but apparently, they don't. I don't know. I don't have cable, so I was like looking for the streaming
You couldn't
option.
get it right away.
You can't. Apparently, ABC or Disney or whatever took that option away to see it live. Not, and because I remember being
Of
able to do
course.
that in previous years, like,
Yeah.
like this. So it just said that, and then I looked, and it was like it's gonna be on Hulu for this week, and I was like, I guess I'll just catch it on Hulu then. But
Classic. They
you
got to
know,
drive you to one of their streamers.
they're always complaining about numbers and stuff like that. Here was me, a watcher, wanting to watch it, and they wouldn't let me. So I don't know. It's interesting. I'm not much of a TV person as much. Like I'll check out. I usually just use the Emmys to be like, all right, what do people think is a good show? Maybe I'll
Right.
check it out. But it's like how much I can barely keep up with the movie releases from year to year to be watching all of these TV
Too much
shows.
TV. Mhm, mhm.
But, like,
I w
my mom is, like, definitely, like, on and, like, "You haven't seen that yet? You haven't?" I'm like, "No, mom, this is." You're asking me to they're on what season now? Season 3? That's 30 hours now I have to
Can't do
commit,
it.
like.
Can't do it. I will say, like, one last thing, Baby Reindeer did win a few
Oh, yes,
things,
yes.
and that's one
Absolutely,
of the things where I was like, and that's why spreading it around is important, is that, like, a show like that has to be recognized.
absolutely, like, when I saw that, that was nominated, I was like, "That has to win." That was, like. And when I was doing, like, things I've seen from this year, I think we talked about it a little bit when that came out, but I was like, this is like truly like so original, like unlike anything I've ever seen before. Like the filmmaking, the performances, everything. I was like, this has to win that category, and it did. So I was happy to
Yes.
see that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Alright.
So yeah, let's get back on track to today's movie, though. Each week we take the red pill and use our certain set of skills to break down the best action films of all time. Today we're talking about the 2009 film Law Abiding Citizen.
Ooh.
This Friday, what do you want, Clyde? I would rather show you. Only one man can stop him. You even think about touching my family? We are gonna stop this guy. Law-abiding citizen. Rated R. Starts Friday.
If you haven't seen it, after the killers of his wife and daughter are set free, Clyde, played by Gerard Butler, takes justice into his own hands, exacting revenge on the system that failed his family. To get this bullet train started, let's take the listeners back to October 16th, 2009, 15 years ago. It was made for $50 million and grossed a total of $127 million worldwide. It opened second against Where the Wild Things Are.
Let's
And
go, Spike Jones.
The Stepfather at number 5. Oh my god, I forgot that movie even existed.
Hell
The
yeah.
remake, at least.
Yes.
Opened alongside Paranormal Activity at number 3. Couples Retreat at number 4. Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs at number 6, and Zombieland at number 7. So
So still some variety in
yeah,
09er.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, wow, that's just an interesting lineup of movies. I don't even know what to say. This is my first time looking at this, so it's wow. Yeah, that is quite a lineup of options to see that weekend. Which brings us to our first segment called "Getting the Band Back Together."
I don't have friends. I got family.
In this segment, we'll take a slow motion look at the filmmaking choices that went into the film and the ass kickers responsible. This movie was written by Kurt Wimmer, who wrote Equilibrium, The Recruit, and most recently, The Beekeeper. and directed by F. Gary Gray, a prolific music video director and also known for Friday, Set It Off, The Negotiator, The Italian Job, and Fate of the Furious.
Mhm.
So a couple of maestros, honestly. What
Yeah.
did you think about the filmmaking?
I thought it was decent. You know, it definitely started like I think I'll just say this that like it's one of those movies that you catch like back in the day I was like, "Oh, this is a great movie," you know, the first time you see it and then it's like
Yeah.
it went into the cable rotation like very early on and like just got syndicated to death. So like you would just catch like 10 minutes here or there and like I feel like certain movies get like a better reputation because of that. And I think this might be like one of those where it's like
Okay.
you just catch it like, you know, in pieces and like that might be the ideal way to watch it compared to like sitting down and watching it like
Okay.
we're doing for this show. Like this was the unrated director's cut I have here.
Oh, snap.
I
Okay.
don't know what was unrated about it necessarily. I guess there was like a little more gore in the opening, like the first kill,
I was gonna
but
say this movie is pretty violent.
it is, yeah. So may I guess some of the gore stuff, you know, might have been like prolonged or like added back in, compared. I don't know, yeah, exactly what it was, but yeah, I like F. Gary Gray though. Generally, you know,
Me
like
too.
Friday is one of my favorite comedies
All
ever.
time. All
Um,
time.
you know, those are some like pretty good '90s 2000s
Dude,
movies that
Set
you're,
It Off.
yeah.
So good.
The Negotiator too, I think probably falls in line with this one the most.
Uh-huh.
You know, as like a thriller with two people at the center of it, like two really good actors. So in that one, it's Samuel L. Jackson and Kevin Spacey. I was definitely thinking of like Seven, you know, with like,
Yes.
you know, Kevin Spacey is in that as well. Like definitely that type of like thriller, like of, you know, we're catching this guy, but he's outsmarting us at every turn. We don't know what to do.
Yeah.
So I like the setup of that. I just think like maybe the execution, and definitely like with the script left a lot to be desired. Like it's very simple.
Yeah.
Like once you
Straightforward.
like within the first 10 seconds, like Gerard Butler's family is raped and murdered, and you're like, whoa, like
Dude. Yeah. It pulls no punches in that open.
like and you see this a lot with like Death Wish and
It's
uh,
very 90s too. And I
yeah.
was sort of like, whoa, F. Gary Gray, like 90s, bringing the 90s to the 09ers.
Yeah, and so like you can see where they were trying to go with like calling out the justice system and like this guy only got a slap on the wrist and blah blah blah, and I'm taking the whole system down.
Yeah.
But it's just kind of ridiculous. Like the more you think about it, you know, like
It's
in,
extreme.
in what world would a murderer get 5 years, even if he did? Like I watch a lot of true crime. All right, so like
Same.
that doesn't make me an expert at all. I'm just saying I just recently watched one with like a similar. Some guy was part of a murder plot. He worked with the investigators. He did not get 5 years. He got like life without parole, basically,
Right.
or something.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
so it's like just because you cooperate, that does not happen where you just get 5 years. I mean, they say something about like, you know, the evidence was inadmissible and blah blah blah.
Right.
But it starts murky like that, and then like once Gerard Butler turns into Jigsaw, it's like how is this one guy do it? It's the same problem I have with
Dude.
Saw. It's like this guy in Saw, it's even worse because it's a dude with cancer. So you're like, how the fuck is this guy
Can
pulling
even
all this
manage
shit
this.
up? You know,
Yes.
like all these traps and getting the timing right to the minute. You know, like there's just so much planning. Like and he had 10 years to plan this stuff, but stuff happens. You can't plan. And so
Not
that's like,
everything.
that's the suspension of disbelief that it's going to work for some more than others. I would say on this rewatch, it kind of was, you know, took a lot for me where I was like, all right, okay. And, Gerard Butler, we'll talk about, and Jamie Foxx, like they're dynamic,
Yes.
but he's definitely going for it. And I guess the main problem I had is just like they build all these threads and then you know the family, Jamie Foxx's family, just disappears and you never hear from them again, you know. And it's
Right.
like that happens quite a bit where it's like even Gerard Butler kind of disappears in the second half of the movie and you're like, well, come on, that's who
It
we're supposed,
gets
you know what I mean?
right. Yeah. It gets a little one dimensional in certain spaces.
So I guess like on a script level, left a lot to be desired. F. Gary Gray is like definitely a serviceable action thriller director, but definitely not like one of my favorites. Like I wouldn't, it doesn't add up to like Set It Off or The Negotiator, any of those ones. Like I
Yeah.
think those ones are much better movies. But weirdly enough, like Italian Job's another one that's equally syndicated and is on cable all the time, and
I'll
I
be
watch.
honest, I put that one on the background a lot.
Yeah,
I
that
am a
was a
fan.
favorite when I was a teenager and a kid, like, just
Oh
watching,
my God.
you
One of
know.
my like best friends as a child got a Mini Cooper and like straight up was like, if I could get this Mini Cooper, it would be like a dream come true
Oh,
because
yeah.
that's how much
I
we
know,
all wanted Mini Coops because of the Italian
I
Job.
know. My grandma has a Mini Cooper, it's sick. It's,
It's the
like,
best. It's
really
so
small,
cool.
I will say, like, I'm not even the tallest person to get
It's
in
very
that.
mini.
It's very mini. And his Fate of the Furious, like, his Fast and Furious is not my favorite either, so I think
Right.
he's one of those directors where certain directors can like elevate the material, and I think he's one of those directors. He's as good as the material. Like he needs the material to be, because
Yeah,
those scripts, Set It Off, Negotiate, Italian Job, those are all like pretty good scripts at
they
the
are.
basis of it. And so this one had like kind of a good inciting incident, and they kind of get lost as it goes on. It felt like, you know what I mean, where it's like I can only do so much as a director
It
to
stays
put this
straightforward.
together.
Yeah, yeah,
But
it
yeah,
stays
what about you?
straightforward. I mean, I feel like there are definitely some hints of filmmaking in there that make me recognize, he has a style per se, but like we were talking about with other directors, like as their careers kind of go on, that style becomes softer and softer and less distinct, in terms of like them just making movies now. I like the little handheld that's kind of there here and there to sometimes show, a more gritty, like POV vibe of being in these scenes. I really like Philly as the location, so there's at least that. That's good.
Yeah.
I like the idea of
Do you
doing the
think they
juxtap
shot this in Philly though? Can I say that? Like, I don't know. Like it,
certain parts, like certain exteriors. I'm like, yes, that is Philly, but I don't know that I could guarantee the whole thing was really there.
it
Like, it
definitely
also
felt
weirdly
like
felt like Canada to me.
it definitely felt like what De Palma always complains about, which like it makes me laugh every time I see it in a movie now. But he's
Mm,
just like where they'll show an establishing shot of like a location, like a known location of a city, just to be
yeah,
like, this is Philly, and then they'll like cut to interior of some place that's actually not Philly.
that's not Philly. I mean,
That
that's
happens a
probably
lot
right
in
here.
TV and in movies. That happens like so much. Like once you see it, you can never unsee it. Like,
Yeah,
and that I just love De Palma. He hates that. He's just like, I hate coverage. I hate this establishing shot. He's like, what is the intention of the scene? I always go into
yeah,
that. What is the intention? And in that, it
yeah.
just feels lazy. It's just like we're just,
Yeah, I
you
wouldn't
know,
say Philly was a character in this
no,
story by any
yeah.
means. So yeah, that's a
Which is
very good
like,
point.
which is kind of, I wish more movies would be in Philly. I like that's a
Same.
city that does have like a lot of character, a lot of history. Like, and
Yeah,
you know,
M.
I
Night's holding it down. He always shoots in Philly.
I love that about, yeah, I love that about him. It's just it's like one of those things where yeah, there's so much. I know you can get like tax breaks and stuff by shooting in these certain areas. That's why people are always filming in like Georgia or like
Or
I don't
whatever, yeah,
know.
Louisiana.
But go to these places, like pay that extra. It really adds a lot more,
It's worth
than
it.
yeah.
Yeah,
Um
for sure, for sure. I do like the juxtaposition of the lethal injection and his daughter's recital, sort of like no future and a burgeoning classical future happening for this child.
I thought that was one of the
Um,
most effective sequences. I agree.
Right,
I
but it's
thought
at the top, right? To your point,
I
like, this movie
know.
starts
Yeah.
off really strong, and then it does kinda get into a very, like, straightforward sort of paint by numbers space, like, I like the score because it's at least standard, but I wouldn't say it's, like, an amazing score, it's just
No,
a
yeah.
this is a proper movie in terms of, like, it has these things, but to your point, like, they're not exactly elevated,
No, yeah, and I guess I get like the feel of like a TV movie in this, not just with the location thing. It's just like just
especially as it goes on.
the stakes of it, and like um yeah, that sequence in particular I like too, with and I thought the score did stick out in that scene too, because she's playing the music, and that's when they bring in those like really violent strings, like as
Yes.
he's like the lethal injection is happening. Like I was like, okay, there's some filmmaking stuff going on here. But yeah, definitely TV movie vibes. And for our younger listeners who don't know what a TV movie is, do we
It's
have to
called
go
High School
into it?
Musical, and that's a
Yeah,
TV movie.
because now streaming has just murkied the waters everywhere. But there used to be movies strictly made for these cable television channels. Now they just put movies on streaming and call them Netflix originals or Hulu originals. And I guess technically those are TV movies, but not really. Like now they
Well,
have
some of
millions of
them
dollars to
really
work with.
are, and
Yeah,
some of them are a little better. But I think
yeah,
these middle ground movies, they're maybe what led to the like streaming creating like being able to benefit from that murkiness because like this is one that's on TV a lot because it maybe feels more appropriate for
yeah. It
TV,
definitely feels
even though
like a
it's so violent.
gorier Law and Order, right, or
Yeah,
something. Like
yeah,
it definitely feels like that. And I guess like TV movie could be like pejorative, but I mean, there were some good ones. It's just like they're lower budget.
right.
You know,
Usually,
they advertised it like this Sunday. At
right.
this time, you have to watch it live or whatever.
Right.
Like,
Yeah. It's and they're usually like paint by numbers vibes. Like they're not
yes,
gonna take too much of a risk here. And even though this movie manages to like make you feel like this is extreme, if you really think about it, it is paint by numbers. It's sort of like this happens, this happens, this happens, and all of those things are like in a screenplay book about how an outline should work.
I would
Like there
say like
isn't
the what's carried over from this TV movie to like streaming pipeline is like if when you would watch a TV movie, you would usually just forget it like the next week. It would be
totally.
you'd watch it once, maybe talk about it with a family member or something like that. And when you watch like some of these, Netflix movies, Hulu movies, I'll be honest, like I'm like, what is the name of this again? Like halfway through watching it, it's like they're sometimes they just come and go. Like I don't
It's
know,
true.
like I don't know what it
Yeah.
is about it, but I think it does point to like what we're saying, where there's just like there's no filmmaking prowess in this. It's very paint by numbers, nothing that you would want to recommend to somebody. Like you have to see this. Like it's one of those like it's content. They just
Yeah.
put it on there because they know people are going to be bored and looking for something.
And it's
You
on
know.
the edge of, trying to still use the extremity, trying to still get us to be a part, like want to be interested in this type of story. And, I think that's also kind of like in the characters and in the performances too, is that like the filmmaking is getting more tame, but it tries to start out strong to grab our attention. And that like is also sort of what I think starts to happen in the like 2010s when we get into movies in that
Mhm.
decade. So it's interesting to do movies from '09 just because like that is an interesting transitionary period for sure.
Yeah, and I guess like some of these streamers can afford some of these bigger name actors. Maybe that's like the difference there, and like
Sometimes.
give them these inflated budgets. But I don't know, man. It's like some of these actors, I'm like, what are you doing these movies? Like
Yeah, you're just collecting your checks. I mean,
Chris
everybody's
Evans,
got to get paid,
Chris Evans, you're a movie star.
Yeah, you
Why are
also
you
don't
doing these?
necessarily need the check, right?
Yeah,
There's no way you need the check.
there's some of
But
but you see them like every once in a while, like every few months, they're on a new streaming movie, and I'm like, dude, you could like I know for sure people would pay to see you in these movies. Like,
But I think
why?
that's a studio issue too, is like they would
Mm,
rather be like, I'll just pay the actor big money because I want the grab of their name versus like taking the risk of trying, a big movie, of trying an original idea and like, putting good money into the screenwriter, good money into the director. And this is like the edge of that, where like this director and this screenwriter, they have had good careers, but they're also probably on the edge of like people not necessarily treating them with the respect that would have earned, more of a stronger writing
it's
or
so
stronger
frustrating though.
directing.
Like Beetlejuice sequels, like raking in the dough, and I just read something where like they were considering putting that on a streamer, and it's like, what? What in the
Exact
world? Why? And like the same thing for this is for sure going on a streamer. The Salem's Lot remake
Uh-huh.
is going straight to Max, and I'm like, what are you doing? Like,
Yeah,
why?
actively trying to like claim some sort of tax situation. It's like the producers of the musical has become what studios do now in order to make their money and pay themselves huge amounts of money without actually doing any work.
Man,
It just
Salem's Lot is so oh man, that one when I saw that trailer and it said going straight to Max, I was like, I know this is probably not the most popular IP out there, but it is Stephen King.
yeah,
It is like vampire stuff. Like
and it's
I
horror. Like as we
like
know, people love to go to the
people
movie
are
theater
gonna
to
go
see
see that.
horror. They don't
Yeah,
mind. Yeah, they love to
and
get a good scare. They're not gonna like rip it apart or be heavily critical of it. They like to be scared. And horror movies, even when they're bad, make money at the box office.
yeah.
So
That's such a bummer though. It's like, I hope that just doesn't disappear. Like that's one of my favorite Stephen King books. Like, and the fact that it's being dumped onto streaming, just like it hurt a little bit. I'm not gonna lie.
I'll still check
It
it out.
hurt.
I'm still gonna check it
Yeah,
out, but I agree,
same.
like, where I stand, where it's like, even if you make a small amount of money, that's still money in your pocket, and it's stupid to walk away from money.
I know.
But yeah, yeah. All right, that brings us to our next segment called Choose Your Fighter.
Welcome to the party, pal.
This is where we take a look at all of the bros and babes that flex their acting muscles and sometimes the real muscles for us movie buffs. This film stars Jamie Foxx, Leslie Bibb, Regina Hall, and Gerard Butler.
Yes, Gerard is amazing in this. He's
Yeah.
truly insane. I really buy him at the top when he's like soups emotional and being like, "Oh, my
Mhm.
family, I'm so sad." But you're absolutely right. Like when he makes
How
a
was that again?
hard,
How did he go? How did he do
oh, my
it?
family.
Oh.
Like he really, like when I saw that, I was like, "Holy smokes, he's out here crying for reals." But then when he makes the hard left turn and becomes this like psychopath, it's sort of like, I don't know what to do, right? Like
Yeah.
wanted a better arc in terms of this idea that like it was this experience and this emotional experience that turned him this way, but we never saw the wavering. We just like
Mm-mm.
saw the psychopath eventually, which I still find insanely entertaining. But it's like to your point of that idea of like starting off really strong and in a place of like grounded and filmmaking and prestige, and then kind of softening into a paint by numbers of like, oh, this is just a psycho who is, getting revenge, just like plain and simple. I did love a lot of his like costume switches. I did think that's like a fun part of this character, that he's out here like fake goateeing it, like wearing
The
wigs,
blonde
like
wig, yeah.
costume design, so funny. But yeah, I guess just it's interesting because like Gerard Butler wasn't one of my like most favorite actors, but I honestly do enjoy watching his movies because no matter how random they are, they're usually pretty entertaining.
And I will say,
And
like, at least
entertaining
he's one
enough.
actor that has not gone into the streaming, pipeline. Like,
Space.
yeah, he's
He has held it down for the theater with those
he
Angel
goes
movies.
he goes to the theater and he's like, I'm a movie star and this is what I'm doing.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's kind of you kind of hit like the flaw of the movie. I think is like he is our supposedly our main character, right? But we don't see him with his family for any extended period of time. We don't know much about him. We get told about him
Yep.
later on in the movie. And there's just so much you can go from, like there's like you said, there's no arc. We never see him struggle. That's something that's not really engaging as a viewer, to see like one person that's smarter than everyone else and just like playing with them. It's like, all right, well,
Right. Right.
but that's kind of what they like ask us to believe of this guy. And so yeah, I don't know.
Same with Jamie Foxx. He starts out kind of like as a conflicted lawyer who like does want justice and wants to do good. And then he kind of turns into like, no, I'm just the lawyer who's trying to win. Like it's not my fault that you can't win a case. It's not my fault that these things aren't winnable, but I'm here to win,
Yeah, it's the same. Yeah, it's the same with both characters too. Like same thing where it's like, yeah, we know that he works a lot, not really the greatest family relationship, but they mostly, I feel like, stay the same throughout the entire movie up until the end. There's no grand arc. Like even when Jamie Foxx finally confronts him at the end, he's just like, "Bravo, still gonna blow this thing up." It's like, what? Okay,
Yeah.
well,
You
you know
don't
what I
kill me,
mean?
I kill you,
Yeah,
right?
it's like you finally figured it out. And that's kind of my problem with like the Saw movies in general. It's like in this type of thing where it's like, because people always say, like, the people that like those movies and are fans, it's like, well, he gives them a chance, and it's like, not really, like they
Right.
still get
He
like
gaslights them into
disfigured,
thinking they have a
or
chance.
and it's like they've really tried to turn Jigsaw into this anti-hero, and I'm like, I cannot buy into it. Even in this last one, like, which people really liked, I'm like, I am not on his side. I don't
No
care if
way.
the health care system is fucked or the justice system is
Yeah.
fucked. It
People
does
don't just
not give
deserve
you
to
carte
die.
blanche
Yeah.
to just take out anybody you feel like. It's just, I'm
Exactly.
never going to, and I feel the people that concerns me, that people are like actively like,
That's a
he did
real,
what he had to do,
problematic piece of our societal situation that's happening. Yeah, that is very true. We went from being like, "Oh, Tony Soprano's pretty interesting," to being like, "Jigsaw's right."
Yeah, exactly. I don't see any problems with his behavior at all. It's like,
Right.
okay, I don't think that's what you're supposed to take away from it.
No, no. But yeah, I think, these guys are pretty one-dimensional. The women don't really get to
Yeah.
do much, Regina Hall just being like, she's so underutilized in this. I love
Oh
her so
man, it
much
was such a
as a
bummer.
comedic
I
actress,
know.
but yeah, she's soft here. Even Leslie Bibb, like I don't really know what her role is or her job is because she's
She
kind of
might
like
have the
serving
most arc
him.
out of anybody in this movie, to be honest. Like, and it's still
Yes.
like very minor, where it's just like,
But
did
they
we
also
make the right
relegate
choice?
But they
It's
also,
like,
like, relegate her to being like, "I'm 35, which means my life is over. Did I do the right things?" And I'm like, "What is happening? Why is
yeah,
35 over the hill here?"
I was very
And
confused at that.
yeah, yeah. So, I'll talk a little bit more about that in kind of like the questions and plot hole space, but I do feel like, there wasn't a lot of depth in the characters. There wasn't a lot of world building
Mhm,
taking place here. And to your point, and De Palma is like the most world building that was there was a couple of establishing shots, and then they kind of did establishing character exposition, and then just
mhm.
went from there.
Yeah, and it's like, I don't know, this type of revenge movie has been done, like, just better. I think it's just because you need, like, maybe if the lawyers had screwed him or something, we never get the
A
implication
little
that that's
something
what
extra.
happened.
Hmm.
It's like, we
Yeah,
get,
he's
like,
just
kind of,
disappointed.
yeah, it's not like we get a line of like he wanted to save his record, his conviction record or something, but it's never
Nope.
like we don't have anyone to root against. So then we're just like watching all of these people just kind of play out in this like, but there's no like reasonable motive or
Yep.
likable character that we're following. It's everyone's just kind of blah, and it's
Yep.
like and even like I just watched there was one that Tarantino, it's like one of his favorite revenge movies. So I watched it off of he wrote a whole chapter on it in his new book.
Nice.
What was it called? Damn it. Rolling Thunder.
Okay.
Where it's like this veteran comes back and it's like but there was so much to that revenge story that like made I'm like, okay, this is
Stepped it
interesting.
up.
He's a veteran, he comes back home and then his family is murdered brutally. And
Yikes.
then he goes on this revenge tour and there's this girl that tries to have a relationship with him but he has too much PTSD. Like there's all this stuff happening
It's
in there
complex.
where you're not just going like hell yeah kill all these motherfuckers, like where it's I was
Right.
like wow there's actually like a lot going on here. And like we covered Taken. I would say even that's like a better example of like okay the arc is this is a father who needs to let go a little more but also there's these scary people out here that will put them into sex
And they're
trafficking.
overtly bad, right?
Yeah,
Like the justice system is flawed. You can't hold individuals accountable for that.
yeah, and he's not going against the system in those, right? He's going after these drug dealers, these
Exactly.
smugglers,
People
and
who
these sex.
are, we can all agree, bad.
So I think that's the difference there in a lot of those revenge movies. They go after the people that wrong them, and then they
Right.
they kill those two guys very early
Yep.
on in the movie, and then it's like, where do we go from here?
Yep. Pretty much. Pretty
It's
much.
like
Yes.
where other people in this movie, Viola Davis in this
Random.
thing.
Yeah. Totally
Whoa!
randomly shows up to be like, I also am a flawed
I
character
don't
and
think
the system's bad.
I don't think I was that flabbergasted at her being in like a random action movie since Black Hat, where she shows up in the very limited capacity in that too, where it's just like, whoa, okay, Oscar Oscar
Yeah.
winner
Way to
Viola
show
Davis
up
is in
here.
here now.
I almost felt like she was going to be like, I'm putting together a team of people and I could really use
Yeah,
Clyde,
the
right?
Suicide Squad. I was thinking of her character there, where she's like, "Bend the rules, I don't care." Like she kind of was getting at that,
She
but
was
again,
giving that.
everything's very hinted at. It's like they were scared to kind of
Yeah, to
go
go
one way
to
or the other.
right.
And then lastly, the guy from Collateral, I just had to shout out because Jamie Foxx was in that also. But you recognize him too, the old white guy that was Jamie Foxx's friend.
Yeah,
He
his
was
like
like
boss or whatever.
he was like one of the chief police guys in that completely fucked up. Remember in the
Yes,
nightclub?
before the nightclub scene. Yes, yes. Yeah. Yeah, I guess like
It was
even
just
that too is like these guys are all making the rounds in this movie rather than
mhm.
like giving something dimensional.
Yeah, and it's like even when he targets the judge, it's like, what did she do? It's like she
Other than just be
presided
like
in
an
the
idiot.
case, and the whole like aha like moment where he's like, aha, I got you, I just cited a random case and you were gonna let me go, and it's like,
Yeah, and like, yeah, because that's my job. Like I
yes,
don't Like, not because
Like,
I didn't make that rule up, but I'm supposed to adhere to it. Yeah, I guess,
yeah,
like, it is they didn't really take on the complex issue in a meaningful way.
definitely not. But yeah, that brings us to our next segment called "The Need for Speed."
Pain don't hurt.
Yes, this is the segment where we do what the Oscars don't do and honor the amazing stuntmen and women for their death-defying work and pick out the punch that knocked us out the most. All right, what are the stunts that stood out to you?
I will say also that this movie might have gotten better reception for me if it was more of those revenge-matic movies of just senseless violence and killing. It's like because then it becomes an exploitation movie. Not
Right.
a lot of action, not a lot of death in here, so it had me
It's true. The
conflicted, you
stunts are
know.
mostly deaths, right?
So I will say there's a lot of bombs in here. I guess number three, I would put the car bombs when he took out the six,
Same.
justice agents.
Yep.
Number two, the phone bomb we just mentioned with the judge,
Yes.
which was kind of confusing because I actually thought it was a sniper shot. I think the sound like whatever sound they used,
Oh, confused it.
it wasn't it sounded like a silencer bullet going through glass, and then I was like, oh damn, there's a sniper or something, and then it was like it was a bomb detonated. I was like, whoa, okay, I didn't did
Yeah.
not know that's what was going on. And then number one, there's two scenes I remember just from cable days watching
Hmm.
this a lot, and one of them is the cemetery, so I got to shout that one out where he has like the mini vehicle that's used for bombs,
Yep.
and instead he uses it for killing killing the dude from Collateral
Right.
with a hail of machine gun fire that go through tanks, and then putting the cherry on top with the bazooka that blows up the Cadillac. So those are
I
my.
had all of the same stunts. I
Oh,
think
really?
the only thing that was different for me was the order there that like I think the best stunt was when they killed the judge just because it's sort of like they did have to blow up like a dummy or something. They did have to make that appear real. So that's a good stunt, but I also couldn't
Yeah.
decide do I include it as a death or a stunt because most of the stunts here are just like the elaborate ways he's committed murder. So that is an interesting piece of this too, is it like it's very violent, but it's mostly murders. It's not quite the action movie we're used to that has a lot of stunts and also kills.
Hmm.
But yeah. So that brings us to our next segment called Death Proof.
If he dies, he dies.
This is where we take a look at the movie's body count and see who bit the dust the hardest. What do you got?
The lethal injection was pretty cool. I wish I like knew more about what was happening there and didn't have that in exposition later. You already mentioned the opening scene, which is just like, it's a memorable death because it's so brutal.
Yeah.
With a rape being included as well. I guess I
Don't
can't
think we
decide
needed that,
between
by the way. Don't think that
right.
was necessary, but
That's a real
whatever.
90s thing, yeah. But yeah, I can't decide which kill was, like, better satisfying just because, like, when he kills his cellmate and stabs that guy so many times
Mhm.
with a steak bone, it's just so brutal and there's so much blood.
I
So I think
know.
it's definitely the most memorable kill, but I do feel like the visuals of Gerard kind of hoisting himself at his own petard at the end there is so good. Like the
Mhm.
fire climbing up the wall and, the like slow-mo of him looking at the bracelet. And, he's been unbeatable up until then. So it's kind of rewarding in that way. But I would say the most memorable one is like that cellmate kill. What about you?
Yeah, I guess, number 3, I would just have to say, like, him getting the revenge on that guy, that's definitely aside from the jail one, probably, like, the goriest one. He takes the saw to the guy's leg, and, he sets the whole setup of it, of, like, he kidnaps him,
Very
with
Saw
the
move.
blowfish, like, what was it? The blowfish poison or whatever, and
Right.
you're gonna feel everything, but you're not gonna be able to move, and then, I'm gonna yeah, that was very Saw, where it was like, geez, this is a horror movie
Really
almost, and
gross.
which
Yeah,
they even
really
call it
gross.
that in the like Jamie Foxx says that, I told her it was a horror movie, horror
Yeah.
film
He's the most psychotic murder takes place first, right? That's like
first.
the first one.
And see, that would have been an opportunity to be like, okay, this guy's completely lost it, and then instead the movie's like, but this guy, he's smart, It's like
Yeah, we gotta make some dealings.
it's like no. What is going on? Number 2, I would say Butler in the fire at the end. It's probably the most cinematic piece of the movie, other than
Totally.
the orchestra, lethal injection scene. And then number one, the cellmate. That was the other scene that I would
So
remember
gnarly.
from Cable, just because it is like so gnarly. Like, and I love Gerard's performance in that, where he's just so psychotic, just
Bold.
being like, oh yeah, have you want a steak? I'll give you the big piece. He's just like
I
he's
need a
really
shower, Warden.
yeah, he's like really chewing it. And there are some like funny lines in this from Fox and Butler that I'm like, this could have used more of this too, like where it becomes super dark, and I feel like they needed some more levity
Yeah. Yeah.
in a certain way, with but I did like his first couple when he was starting to play games with them. I want the mattress, the one on TV, and I want the iPod loaded up, and
Yep.
those fritters, like all that stuff was pretty good. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Silly.
Which takes us to our next segment called Exit Wounds.
Come on, don't bullshit me.
This is where we'll talk about the film's imperfections and decide whether they are fatal hits or just minor flesh wounds. All right, what tripped you up?
I think we covered a lot of them already. I just think, there's no way this could conceivably happen. Like, the more you think about it, everything gets more ridiculous. Like him,
Yeah,
sawing a tunnel into every single cell because,
just in case.
he didn't know where he'd be placed, which that would never happen. There are a lot of lines being blurred of just like, throw the law book away, fuck his rights, that
Right,
type of stuff where it's like,
right.
okay, like I get it, but again, who am I supposed to root for in this? I don't like the law people. I don't like Butler. Like, this is just a lot of unlikable people, and I'm watching them get murdered, like at a certain point. And it's just, yeah, there. I think the set pieces definitely could have been elevated. Where at least in the Saw movies, I'll give them credit in this regard, where it's like they'll have a timer on it, and
Mm,
they'll draw it out. You have 60 seconds to do this, and it's like there was not really that tension I felt in any. Even the one where it's like, they had to get to that guy by 1 o'clock. They had to give him his food by 1 o'clock. It's like
yeah, they
I,
didn't take it seriously.
I was expecting more of that, like him playing games with them more. And it kind of turned into more of a traditional terrorism plot, which yeah.
Meh.
But what about you?
I mean, mostly just Leslie Bibb. Like, I don't know why they had to kill her. She definitely
Mm.
doesn't deserve it. I really didn't like the scene where they were like, let's just put in here that she has no partner and no kind of like prospects for the future, so it's okay to kill her. And she also absolutely had like 3 to 5 business days to get out of her car before it blew up. And she was just like,
Yeah, that was
in
weird
there.
because like when the thing comes up when it's unlocked, I saw it was up, and then she was struggling. So I guess at first I assumed, oh, he locked all the doors and made it impossible. But then I saw that and I was like, okay, well, why is she not getting up? Like, it was, yeah, like
It feels like it was kind of like a
pretty
cheap way to
sloppy.
raise the stakes they like didn't need to do, because like she of all people, of all the characters in this movie, like truly could not have stopped anything that happened to Gerard Butler or his family from happening. Like she truly had no power to do anything differently, like some of the other characters you could argue could. So I feel like that's just the one thing that like really trips me up because I love me some Bib. I don't want her to
Mhm.
die.
And
No
like she
way.
died in vain too, because another piece of like good detective movies is you need the revelations. Like Seven is a great example where it's like their detective work does actually catch John Doe ahead of schedule, and
Yes.
even though he's the mastermind, that you feel like they're integral, like they're doing their job,
Right.
and like they're trying to catch him. And in this one, it's like she dies, and then he gets an email from this Chester guy, and it was like the same thing that Jamie Foxx had mentioned earlier in the thing, where it's just like, let's get the prices of the warehouses, and it's like, well, that's not really a new discovery. You said that like 30 minutes ago.
Right, right.
So
Yes,
it's like
exactly.
it was kind of, yeah, I didn't yeah,
Missing all those pieces.
missed it.
All right, but that brings us to our last segment, Game Over, man.
What a picture.
Good picture, yeah.
That is so much fun. I love that stuff, the killing.
A lot of killing.
In our final segment, we'll rate the film out of 5 friendship bracelets. What do you got?
I think like when I first was rewatching this and being like, this movie is savage, I wanted to give
Yeah.
it a, greater score. But I think I'm gonna just go right down the middle and sort of say like it's entertaining. It has a fine, a fun concept, a fun kind of like creative kills that require stunts. So I think I'll just give it like a nice even 3, not too special, not like the worst movie ever, but definitely leaves me wanting more. What about you?
Yeah, I'm gonna go 2.5. Again, this is one that was a lot better on cable, and when I first saw it, I definitely, when I was younger, definitely thought it was a lot better. But again, it just kind of leaves you wanting in a lot of respects. You know, like if it was gorier or more exploitation, like okay, maybe I could have said like at least it has that, but it really
Right.
doesn't. Aside from a couple of kills, and then if it wanted to be a more of a thriller where he's playing games with the detective. You get a little bit of that, but it's like there's all these little pieces that they put in there, and it kind of just becomes this like wish wash jumbo of like, all right, well, this is all pretty forgettable, you know. But
Yeah, just
definitely like
standard.
the best way to watch it is on cable, like I said, and just not paying attention, just in these chunks, you get to see Butler ham it up in certain instances. I think that's the takeaway here. Yeah.
Totally, totally. I completely agree. All right. I think that wraps it up for us. Let's remind the people where they can find us.
Get your fix and follow the show at We Stay Buff on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, and on Twitch at The Buffs. Follow me on all the socials at Misfit_minded and my website, misfitminded.com.
Take us for a ride and subscribe to the podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Please leave a positive review, 5 stars, 5 stars, 5 stars. And you can follow me on all the socials at It's Me, Shani B.
Next week, we'll be covering Fight Club. Thanks again for listening. We'll catch you next time for another edition of Movie Buffs. Until then.
I need a shower, Warden.
Get him out!